Today we're talking about some early Beauty and the Beast variants that are more disturbing and involve murder and sleeping with an actual pig. Fairy tales are wild, y'all. The first one is an Italian story called The Pig King, a literary fairy tale written down by Giovanni Straparola in the 1500s, so 200 years before the French version of Beauty and the Beast that we're familiar with. The story starts with a queen falling asleep in her garden. In fairy tales, this is never good, and in Straparola's fairy tales, it's gonna lead to some kind of animal child. He's the one who wrote Biancabella and the Snake, where a woman falls asleep in a garden and a snake slithers into her womb and her daughter is born with a snake wrapped around her. This one doesn't involve that level of violation. So these three fairies pass by and they decide they are going to give her some gifts. The first one says the next time she lies with her husband, she's going to get pregnant with a son who will be incredibly beautiful, and also she's going to be protected so no harm comes to her. Next one said that son is going to have every virtue under the sun. The third one kind of goes off in left field. She says this woman's going to be the wisest woman in the world, but her son's gonna look like a pig. It's gonna be a pig. Until he had 3 times taken a wife. Not sure how that's a gift, but okay. 9 months later, she gives birth to a piglet. And the husband is horrified. He wants to throw it away. His wife is just like, no, I love this pig. He is my son. We're gonna raise him like he is our son. And they do. He learns to talk. They dress him in fine clothes. They give him an education. And he is like a human, except he also is like a pig and has this urge to just always roll around and wallow in mud and do pig things. One day, the pig prince came home covered in mud and filth, as was his wont, and he lay down on his mother's rich robe and in a grunting tone said, "Mother, I wish to marry." Now remember, his mom was asleep when the fairies did all of this, and so she thinks she just had a pig son. She has no idea about the whole getting married 3 times will transform him. Mom's literally like, son, don't talk foolishly, no one's gonna want to marry you. And he's like, I want a wife, and kind of throws a tantrum about it. So she goes to her husband and she's like, dude, who are we gonna get to marry our child? So the queen hears of this really poor woman who has 3 daughters, and she's like, that's how we're gonna do it. They bring the poor woman to her and they're like, yo, we want your oldest daughter to marry our pig son, and yes, he's a disgusting pig, but she'll be rich and she'll inherit the kingdom one day, and you're poor, so So the mom's like, yes, and of course her daughter's like, ew, no, but she's like, daughter, this is it. This is your only chance. They bring the poor girl to the palace. They dress her up in beautiful attire. And then the pig comes home all covered in dirt like normal. And the mom's like, guess what? We found you a bride. And he gets so excited. He's jumping around, flinging his dirt everywhere. It says he pawed and nuzzled at her to show his affection, but she is horrified, pushes him away. And she's like, oh my God, you're getting my beautiful clothes dirty. And he's like, didn't I buy you those clothes? Aren't you poor? So they get married and it's time to go to bed. And she is alone by herself in the chamber and she thinks to herself, what am I to do with this foul beast? This very night while he lies in his sleep, I will kill him. And she apparently says this out loud. Never a smart move. And he's outside the door and he hears her say she's planning to kill him. He gets into bed with her, and once she's asleep, he struck her with his sharp hooves and drove them into her breast so that he killed her. In the morning, the queen comes in, finds her dead, and then goes and finds her son, and she's like, what's up? And he's like, she was gonna kill me. I had to kill her. Yes, she said she was gonna kill him, but she was asleep. I don't think that would hold up as self-defense in court today. Like in most fairy tales, this entire thing happens again with the second poor daughter. He's pestering his mom for another wife, and he even threatens to kill her if she doesn't get him another wife. So the queen goes to the third of the poor daughters and she's like, will you please marry my son? And this girl is different. She's like, I will do whatever you say, queen. I will bear it all patiently. I would be honored. And the pig comes in and gets all over her with his filth. She just lets him. And the queen's like, you could push him away, and she's like, no, he is my husband. This is a quote. The pig heard her and he got up and kissed her on the face and neck and bosom and shoulders with his tongue, and she was not backward in returning his caresses, so that he was fired with a warm love for her. When bedtime comes, she welcomes him to bed. They go on together as husband and wife, and eventually he feels she's earned his trust. He steps out of bed, takes off his pigskin, and shows that he's actually a hot young man, and she's like, oh, yay! But he says it's a secret, and we're not told why he's never told his parents this, or if he can't because of the curse, but she knows, and so he still lives as a pig all day, but every night when they sleep together, he takes off the pigskin and she gets to sleep with him in human form. Eventually, she gets pregnant and gives birth to a boy who is a normal human child, and everyone is so excited because they were worried it was going to be a pig. After that, she's like, I gotta tell his parents the truth now that they've got this grandchild. And so one night while he's asleep in his human form with his pigskin on the floor, she goes and gets the parents and brings them in, and she's like, look, your son's actually a man. Somehow the king knows what to do. He gets the pigskin and he gives it to his servants, and he's like, destroy this. They tear it up and destroy it, and apparently that makes him a handsome man forever, and the king is so happy he abdicates the throne, he gives the crown to him, and our girl becomes the queen. There's a lot of upsetting things here, like giving your third daughter to this pig who has killed her two sisters. I mean, poverty will make you do a lot of things. As with the original Beauty and the Beast, a lot of these stories are clearly intended to show girls who are going to go into arranged marriages, even if he's like a pig, be nice about it. Marry who your parents say to marry. Don't offend him, and be kind, and he may turn into a beautiful, handsome prince. There's a similar German version of this by the Brothers Grimm called Hans my Hedgehog, and it's one of the only times that an animal in a Brothers Grimm story is not entirely an animal. He's half hedgehog, and the bottom half, as you can see from this leg here, is human. So there's a peasant who's got enough land and money, but he and his wife can't have a kid, and they get mocked by the other peasants, and so he's like, I want to have a child, even if it's a hedgehog. And then his wife gives birth to a child that is half hedgehog. Careful what you wish for. When he's a young man, he leaves home riding a giant rooster and playing the bagpipes. Because of the bagpipes, this king who is lost comes across him, and he's like, hey, I'll give you whatever you want if you help me find my way home. He says, sure, I'll help you find your way home, but you have to give me whatever first greets you when you get home. And he makes him sign it on a piece of paper. And the king, thinking that he's illiterate because he's a hedgehog, is like, sure. To get to the kingdom, his daughter runs to greet him. And so Hans is like, all right, you got to give me your daughter. The king tries to get out of it. The king actually tries to like have his army fight off Hans, but Hans like flies on his rooster over the troops and goes, and he's like, give me your daughter. The daughter fights with him, so does the king, but he eventually takes her. And again, Hans is kind of awful like the pig king. He gets her in his carriage, and then he takes off all her clothes, and he rolls around and pricks her all over with his hedgehog spikes. He's like, this is because you broke your promise to marry me and tried to fight me. Go home. I don't want you. He sends her home in disgrace, and you can definitely read into him pricking her and marking her, but then throwing her away. I personally don't think she deserved it for not wanting to marry a half hedgehog man her father promised her to. I feel kind of like the rooster in this version. The whole thing happens again with a second girl who this time is just like in the Pig King. She dutifully goes with him and says, I'll do what you say. She's rewarded because on their wedding night, he takes off the hedgehog skin and he's like, now that you've married me, we can burn this hedgehog skin and I'm gonna be a gorgeous man from now on. Clearly the same moral. Marry the horrible man, girls. It'll probably work out if you're nice. Some people have asked if I'm on Instagram in case TikTok ends up going away, so I am. Here is where you can find me. Also check out my podcast, Folk Tales and Fairy Lore, Andrea Lynn, my young adult historical fantasy, Dust Spells, which is based on the 12 Dancing Princesses by the Brothers Grimm, and no one's forced to marry a horrible pig creature in it.